Once again, a warm welcome to those of you joining us today for our new webinar series on creation care. As a few of you are continuing to join, and I know we've got people joining from all over the world, it's wonderful to have you with us. For those of you who are new to EMI, EMI is a Christian organization that builds and designs projects that bring the hope of Christ to communities around the world. My name is Rob Quayle. I'm a chartered building services mechanical engineer by background and the manager of the projects and programs at EMI Nicaragua. I live here in Managua, and I am delighted to be hosting this series on creation care. For the last year, it's been great to be part of EMI's creation care working group as we've been discussing this topic, been seeking to be more intentional in the way that we do sustainable design well here at EMI. And that's included a forum that has delved into various different topics over the past year. And we've found that there's been a growing interest within the staff team at EMI on the theme of sustainable design and creation care, and also amongst the wider EMI network. So we felt that it would be good to open up this series to a wider audience to have a chance to engage further. And I'm delighted today to welcome David Wright, who will be giving us an introduction to this theme of creation care. What is creation care? How is EMI involved? And many other themes. So by way of brief introduction to David, for those of you who don't know David already, David is EMI's Africa and Europe Regional Director, a chartered civil and structural engineer from Belfast in Northern Ireland, married to Melanie. They have 4 kids, 2 girls, 2 boys. And David has spent much of his professional career working in Africa and has served in the EMI offices in Uganda and Senegal. I won't go further because I know I think you've got a bit more introduction and background to give in your presentation, including some cracking looking historical personal photos. So looking forward to that. And David, welcome. It's great of you to be kicking off this series for us.
Thanks, Rob.
If it's okay, I'm just going to pray for us then as we make a start. Heavenly Father, we thank you and we praise you for the wonder of your incredible creation. We thank you that we get to be a part of that creation, we get to enjoy it, and that you have called us to steward it. Help us in this series, Lord, we pray, and this presentation today as we engage in this topic. Help us to discern your voice, and would you bless David as he speaks to us now. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I should have added, we're going to have a chance for questions at the end of the presentation, but please do feel free to post questions in the chat at any point during the presentation, and we'll pick that up at the end. David, over to you.
Thanks very much, Rob, for your introduction. And thanks to everyone who's joining us tonight or this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are, for this Creation Care webinar series. And I think, as Rob said, there's people listening in from all over the world, whether that's live or maybe later via a recording. And just as we embark on this Creation Care webinar series, our desire is really through discussion and collaboration together and grappling with some of these climate crisis issues and what our response should be as professionals. Our desire is that we'll be able to see that we can and already have created signposts of hope and restoration. Signposts created through the design and construction of great facilities for our ministry partners at EMI, creating a built environment that leaves a positive footprint, environmentally, socially, and financially. And I hope that together we can answer that question and continue to realize what that looks like where EMI works, and in fact, where all of us live and work, wherever that is in the world. Perhaps I can share a little bit of my story. It may come as a surprise to you. I graduated from the Queen's University of Belfast in Northern Ireland with a master's degree in civil engineering back in 1993. You can see that picture. I know some of you are thinking, are you sure it wasn't 1983 or 73? Anyway, that's for you to have a good laugh at. But after working as a structural engineer in Belfast for 5 years, our family left for Southern Africa. And since then, and over 18 years, we've lived and worked in Namibia, in South Africa, in Lesotho, all in Southern Africa. And then after joining EMI in Uganda, in East Africa, and most recently for 5 years in Senegal, in West Africa. And we're now based in Northern Ireland, just outside Belfast. And I think what a privilege to be able to enjoy and experience firsthand the amazing beauty of the natural world, whether that's here in Northern Ireland or in many of the national parks in some of these countries in Africa that we've lived in. And it's really the intricate balance of ecosystems that rely on the tiniest insects like ants, termites, and one of my favorites, the dung beetle. Really right to the most photographed creatures in the animal kingdom, what is known as the Big Five. So it's the elephant, it's the rhinoceros, it's the buffalo, it's the lion, and the leopard. And really every creature playing its part in a delicately balanced masterpiece of interdependence that can only speak of divine design. And in fact, it was belief in God that drove the rise of modern science. Those scientists that some of us we might remember from our school days or university days, Newton, Galileo, and Kepler, they expected to find order in nature because they believed in a creator. And C.S. Lewis said about them, they expected to find law in nature because they believed in a great law giver. And I think it's good just as we start on this in this series, to really remind ourselves, what is our motivation as we think about creation care? Where does our motivation come from? Is it just because of the climate crisis that we find ourselves in? Well, actually, I believe it goes much deeper than that. Growing up as a child and a teenager back in the 70s and 80s, now that's the previous century, my father taught me that if you borrow something from someone, from a friend or from a neighbor, you should return it to them in as good as or even better condition. And that's a principle I've tried to live by. So if I borrow somebody's car, a friend's car or a neighbor's car, I will aim to give it back to them full of petrol or full of diesel and try and give it a wash. Now, I've never actually borrowed a fully electric car, but if I did, I would hope I would return it fully charged. And in a way, it's no different for the earth. It has been entrusted to us by God. The Bible says in Psalm 24 that the earth is the Lord's. And in the book of Genesis, the first book in the Bible, it tells us that we've been given the responsibility to look after the earth and to steward the earth's resources responsibly. So even if the earth and the climate wasn't in crisis, we should be caring for our planet because in a way, it's an expression of our obedience and our love to God. Wouldn't it be amazing if we were to hand back the earth to God and say, we're giving you back your planet. Look how we've cared for it. And by the way, what do you think of some of these amazing facilities and spaces we created? And while all of that is true, the Bible doesn't actually stop there. And it just gets better and better the more I think about it. EMI's vision talks about people restored by God and the world restored through design. And what does that mean? Our restoration by God means that we become children of God. And since we are God's children through faith, what does that also mean? Well, as his children, we also become an heir together with Jesus. And you might ask, well, heir of what? Well, actually, we are co-heirs of all that belongs to Christ. And it says the earth is the Lord's. So in fact, We will inherit the earth with him when all things are finally restored. Isn't that is amazing? So actually, in a selfish sort of way, it's in our own best interest to look after the earth because we will own it together someday as children of God, as heirs with Christ. In every country that we've lived in, we have seen the stark contrasts between beauty and degradation as we think about the climate crisis. Whether that's in Africa or in the UK, but probably more so in Africa, where so often, as in the global south, we see death and destruction caused by the effects of extreme weather systems or failure of crops and agriculture, by sustained periods of drought from global warming. And this ultimately leads to suffering. And unfortunately, countries in the global south tend to suffer the worst consequences of the climate crisis, whether that's through increased frequency and intensity of storms, or because of rapid growth of informal settlements, poor land use, or inadequate or outgrown infrastructure. And maybe even more recently, we can see here the extreme drought in South Africa last year. And it could be very easy as an engineer in your 50s, when you're faced with these challenges, it can be easy to become cynical and ask, is there even any point in trying to make a difference? But if you take one thing away from watching this webinar tonight, I would like to encourage all of you, all of us, in fact, to look out for those signposts of hope and restoration wherever you live and work, whether in the UK, in the US, in Africa, Asia, wherever that is. And in fact, when you start looking for these signposts, it is amazing how many you will see. Here's one here, the Global Carbon Budget Office. So they recently reported that in 2024, we emitted record amounts of CO2 into the atmosphere. Now, that isn't the signpost of hope. But despite that, there is still hope that we are making progress. They also reported that there's been a decrease in land use change emissions. So what does that mean? Well, it basically means that the emissions, land use change emissions refer to the release of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere as a result of altering the natural use of land. So these emissions occur when natural ecosystems like forests or wetlands or grasslands are converted to other uses like agriculture, urban development, and infrastructure. So there has been a change in these land use emissions in the past decade. And this is leading, as you can see there, to an overall plateauing of the total emissions. And fossil fuel emissions are reasonably likely to plateau in the next decade and will hopefully lead to a period of year-on-year decreasing emissions. Now, yes, that's all later than what we really need, but it seems like the momentum is in the right direction. On another signpost, we can see progress around the world. In China, for example, and if you're a structural engineer, this is particularly of particular interest. Developments last year led to the publication of an official Chinese low carbon steel standard. And that will hopefully drive the decarbonization of both primary and secondary steel. Now that's in a country that produces half of all the steel on Earth. So that's a little signpost of hope right there. My son, now he's in his first year of university, doing a structural engineering with architecture degree, also at Queen's University in Belfast. And it's just interesting to compare notes from a long time ago, back in the early 90s to now in 2025. It's interesting to see the differences. There are a lot of similarities, but some differences as well. And the most stark is the emphasis right from the beginning on sustainable design. talking about embodied carbon, advocating for design solutions that simply use less stuff. And this change can be seen in the design industry in the UK as well. And this was highlighted for me when I recently read an article in the Structural Engineer. That's the monthly magazine for the Institution of Structural Engineers. And the author of this article was talking about a past project and just comparing that against the institution's so-called hierarchy of net zero design. How can we use less stuff in our designs? Can we challenge the brief? Is construction of a new building the answer? What about not building anything? If that is not possible, can we build less by repurposing existing buildings or through refurbishment or reusing existing spaces and maximizing what is already there? So these are some of the principles that are now being taught. And even myself, as a 53-year-old structural engineer, I'm learning about these principles and trying to put them into practice. Rob mentioned the Creation Care working group in EMI, and recently we had the opportunity to join with what's called Missions Agency Creation Care Group. And that's come from the Lausanne World Evangelical Alliance Creation Care Network. And if any of you were following the Lausanne conference in Seoul last year, they produced a very clear call to evangelicals around the world that creation care is a core biblical call to action for the church. And they have a creation care network dedicated to promoting the work. So EMI were invited to join this group online, and that really gives EMI a seat at the table to interact with and pray with a large group of worldwide mission organizations, and really to share our particular calling to further sustainable design and construction. So last month, Rob Quayle and Stephen Douglas from EMI's working group were invited to present on EMI and just share our efforts in this area. And we really hope that we can learn from and encourage each other through this collaboration in this group. So maybe a little bit more about EMI's Creation Care working group. Over the last couple of years, this forum has been formed and meeting monthly with the aim of encouraging just collaborative conversations around the subject of creation care, to share ideas, any research that is being done, and practical examples of what is already being done in the projects of EMI around the world. And in many ways, the very fact that we are seeking to design and construct facilities that are culturally appropriate, sustainable, affordable, and transformational, it speaks already to creation care. The group, we've also wanted to try and develop a design guide, like an assessment tool, a sustainability assessment that could be used to measure our efforts in this area for improvement. But perhaps more on that later. Towards the end of last year, we decided to send out a survey to all the staff of EMI. We wanted to ascertain the views of our staff around this subject of creation care. We asked people to share their views on how creation care impacts their work within EMI and how that should help us shape our approach to sustainable design and construction practices in our work. And I must say the results were pleasantly surprising. And I know you're not really supposed to do this with statistics, but I would guess that the group on this webinar, on this call tonight, is a similar demographic to EMI staff around the world, and that you would be thinking similarly about this subject of creation care in your work. So maybe let me just share a few highlights from the survey. . So we asked for views on what our staff thought about some of the key verses in the Bible that are quoted when referring to creation care. And those are the ones I quoted earlier from Psalm 24 and Genesis. And really, these are the three main themes that came up: sustainable and responsible use of resources. And one of the quotations from the survey said, "As architects, we are supposed to come up with creative ways of designing buildings and materials that are environmentally friendly. It is our responsibility." And the theme of impact on people and future generations. Many recognizing that caring for creation, it's not just about the natural environment, but also about loving and serving people, especially the most vulnerable. And one quotation on that was, "Trying to reduce any harmful impact we have on the created world, seeking to minimize climate change, especially where it hits the poorest, hardest, and doing this through our personal and professional lives." And then creation as a reflection of God's glory. And one of the quotations there, "Take care of it, protect it, enjoy it, as it is a reflection of the Lord." And we also asked the question, and really just looking at some of the main takeaways from the survey. What did we learn from what the staff of EMI are thinking about creation care? So yeah, focusing on environmental impact and resource stewardship. So most people responded emphasizing, let's reduce our environmental impact and try and manage responsibly the resources, and really also calling for a holistic approach that considers ecological, social, and economic factors. There's an interest in practical tools and implementation as well. Just a desire for practical resources. How can we do our work of designing sustainably even better? How can we share those resources and encourage each other in our offices around the world? And an interest also in metrics, just assessing our progress. Can we measure it? Can we evaluate it year on year and see what the impact is of these efforts in creation care? And really a big one as well, desire for collaboration and shared practices. I think one of the great things about EMI is just our staff value collaboration, across offices around the world, and just learning from each other through shared experiences, shared projects, just this collaborative approach. And just really to continue that in this area of creation care. Really, EMI has been designing sustainably for over 40 years. And what we saw with the survey is the desire to take that even further, to develop design guides, to measure our progress so that we can do our work even better, to reduce even further and even leave a positive impact on the environment, and continue to leave signposts of hope in the facilities that we design and build, and the impact that those places have for the ministries that we serve. And really, this EMI Creation Care webinar series came about as a result of that desire for more collaboration and grappling with some of these things together, not just within EMI, but with many people around the world that are involved with EMI through volunteering or mentoring or going on project trips and just sharing their skills and experience. So we want to do this together. We want to collaborate together around this subject. So I encouraged you a little bit earlier just to look out for those signposts of hope and restoration in your work and your communities and your environment. And as I said, we've lived in different places in Africa over an 18-year period. And yes, it can be easy to become cynical, but as Rob said, I'm a regional director and I get to visit the offices and their projects within the different offices in Africa, Senegal, Uganda, and South Africa. And I get to see the projects and the communities that are using those facilities. and I get to see real hope in action. And that really motivates me to strive for more and to encourage EMI to strive for more. To be an organization that designs a world of hope. And I believe that together, wherever you work, all of us, whether we work at the EMI or we work for some other engineering consultancy or wherever it is, we can all be a part of creating those signposts of hope and restoration. So what I want to do now, I want to leave you with some of those signposts, some of the projects and pieces of research that EMI has been involved with, as we as an organization seek to bring restoration to people and to the earth. So the first one, the GEM Foundation. I love visiting this place. I've been like 2 times already. This is a place where severely handicapped children with acute care needs are looked after with love and in a beautiful environment. It's in Uganda. Some of you may have seen the video about the EMI designed playground. This is a place of hope. This is a huge signpost of hope within Uganda. It's a place of joy and smiles and laughter. And yes, there's tears and there's grief and there's suffering as well. But what a privilege to play our part in bringing hope to these children. And not only that, this site, they're almost totally self-sufficient in terms of energy consumption and food production as well. Our research and development department in the EMI's Uganda office, so they recently did a carbon footprinting exercise for some of their recently constructed buildings, and they used one of the GEM houses as their baseline. So they were calculating kilograms of CO2 per square meter of building, calculating man hours per square meter, cost per square meter, and construction days per square meter. And going forward, they're looking to reduce these project metrics on future projects. So stay tuned, hopefully a bit more about that, perhaps in a future webinar. But I believe this is a signpost of hope right there, the actual project, but what the research and development department are doing in looking to reduce the impact of the facilities that are built. This next one, this one comes out of the Nicaragua office and Rob Quayle. So they've developed a sustainability assessment tool that can be used as part of a project report or as a separate sustainability appraisal. It's based off this book by Peter Uzzelin's Sustainability and Scarcity. Some of you may have read it. And really, when we were looking at this, you know, some of the sustainability building tools developed, such as BREEAM or LEED, we cannot apply those to the typical types of projects that EMI is involved with in the Global South. And really the desire was to create something that shows an intentional assessment of what has gone into the design of a facility. And really an assurance to our clients that we are designing sustainably and in accordance with our vision statement. It speaks of restoration of people and planet. And the key areas that are covered in this assessment too are design considerations, infrastructure, site and environment, building materials and techniques, and administration. And really this is another signpost of hope that we can offer to our clients as EMI. And again, possibly more about this in a future Creation Care webinar. Okay, this next one, it's not a very exciting picture. And I'm not an electrical engineer, but this thing, it's called a power quality analyzer device. And this has the potential to improve the efficiency of the electrical designs that you use. So what exactly does that mean? Well, I'm told, and I'm not the expert, And you might have to register for a future webinar to find out more. But this device, it's not completely finished yet. It's able to monitor voltage, current, and frequency of all electrical phases in a facility where it's installed. And it can send that information to the cloud, and then somebody in the research and development department at EMI Uganda can look at the data. And what does that data tell them? Well, it gives them good data so that they can better size electrical equipment for ministries, including solar systems. And this data can be used when they're estimating and designing electrical systems for similar facilities. And they're getting a really accurate estimate of energy needs. Thus, they're saving clients money. So again, that little device, it doesn't look exciting, but that's a signpost of hope right there. So tune in later to a future webinar to find out more. And there's one of the electrical engineers in the Uganda office going through some of the details. What about landscape architecture? Well, somebody once said, if architecture is a box, everything outside the box is landscape architecture. The whole profession of landscape architecture is creation care. They create healthy, safe, and beautiful outdoor spaces for everyone, bringing science and design together to make our communities better places to live, work, and play. And talking about playing, I mentioned this earlier. This is the GEM Foundation playground, which was designed and constructed by EMI. And at this stage, I just want to give a quick shout out to a couple of firms who collaborated with EMI for the design of the playground. So Chad Kennedy from Westwood Professional Services and Justin Wilson from Play Space Creative. Thank you for your involvement and your collaboration. And just a quick aside as well, if you want to find out more about volunteering or mentoring or how to collaborate with EMI, there's going to be a QR code to scan coming up at the end of the presentation. So watch out for that. But again, this is just another tangible signpost of hope for these children. This next one, this is a facility designed by EMI Senegal. This is in Senegal. It's a translation and literacy center for SIL Wycliffe. And this is really a signpost of hope for communities in West Africa that do not have the Bible in their heart language. But what a great place to work. And maybe it's because I'm from the Emerald Island of Ireland. I just love green. But in Senegal, it's a dry, hot, and dusty land. Walking into a facility such as this, it just brings a sense of calm, coolness, and tranquility. And at the same time, they're utilizing solar for their electricity needs. So there's a building, a ministry center. It's a signpost of hope right there in Senegal. Going back to Uganda, this is a Mazima primary school and secondary school. Now, both the primary and secondary schools in Jinja in Uganda, they prepare lunch for hundreds of children each day. Most of the time, they're using firewood to cook these meals. But traditional, typical wood-fired stoves are inefficient and tend to fill the cookhouses with smoke and soot, resulting in higher operating costs for the ministry. It contributes to deforestation and creates a harmful work environment for the cooks. So EMI's research and development team worked to develop more efficient wood burning and gas burning stoves using materials from a nearby vermiculite mine. These redesigned stoves, they lower wood fuel or gas consumption. They shorten cook times and keep smoke out of the kitchen, which is very important. So creating a nicer working environment and saving money at the same time. So another little signpost of hope right there. And this is in Tanzania. This is a microgrid power system in Tanzania. This is for a 300-acre ministry campus in rural Tanzania. It's serving people in the southern part of the country with education. It's got health facilities. It has agriculture and vocational trainings. And there's over 2,000 daily users at this site. So by combining solar panels, batteries, and power control with mainline utility power input and backup diesel power generation, the ministry now has a sustainable power plant capable of supplying their needs far into the future. Across 4 years, EMI guided this ministry through the design and execution stages of this project, as well as training and selecting plant operators. In fact, during the first 5 months of operation, the microgrid generated 59 megawatt hours of clean solar power. And this is some of the kids in one of their school assemblies. So those are just some signposts of hope and restoration that EMI has been involved with all over the world. But we want to see more. And really the goal of this webinar series, we want you to be a part of these conversations. We don't have all the answers. I believe that together, collaborating together, we can do better and do more. So that's why now we're going to open it up for a time of Q&A with our remaining time. So thank you everyone for listening. I'll just hand it back now to Rob just to facilitate that discussion. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, David. And yes, do be thinking of some questions to post there in the chat. Just a couple of reflections from me whilst you do that, though. Again, thank you, David. And just a lot in there, a lot that strikes me. And one thing that you said, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, but just that point you made about countries and communities in the global south would appear to be increasingly more impacted by the growing challenges represented in the various ecological crises that are affecting the world at the moment, and how at EMI we seem to be uniquely placed to address some of those challenges. EMI staff team, but also the EMI wider volunteer network. And some of those signposts that you shared there are those signposts of hope, pointing to where communities have been positively impacted, whether it's anything from good landscaping design to efficient cook stoves. There's so many different ways that EMI can get involved. It's really inspiring. And yet, as you say, there is so much to be done, so much more to be done. We've been doing this for 40 years under different guises, good sustainable design. But it's exciting to be part of a fresh drive to want to be more intentional about that. So, yeah, David, thank you for introducing some of those themes. And as also just been shared in the chat, a little plug for the fact that this is obviously just the first of a number of webinars. The next one coming up in June, on the 11th of June, is going to be focusing on energy. And if you're intrigued by that box of tricks that David showed there with the wires coming out, the power quality analyzer and the work that they're doing in Uganda on monitoring energy efficiency, that's going to be a theme of our talk as Ken Jones and his team from Uganda present to us on the 11th of June. So do click on that link if you want to register for that and find out more details. David, we don't have any questions coming in yet. So that means you obviously did a good job of covering off any potential questions before they came. So whilst a few come in potentially, can I just ask you, of all the projects that you've worked on, and I know some of those that you presented there are ones that you're familiar with, and others are projects from other people you know. of all the ones you've worked on, where have you seen sort of the most intentionality in sustainable design, or something that's grabbed you as seeing a really neat, efficient design solution to address this issue?
I think EMI has been doing this, as you said, for 40 years. So even just in how we position buildings to get good ventilation, to reduce like energy use, all of those types of things. And I think that building in Senegal, the SIL building, I think particular attention there was just put in like providing shades to like external corridors, providing good ventilation, but also the use of solar panels as well, just to generate electricity. But at the same time, just having this beautiful courtyard, and actually just the client just actually doing that with the project and producing that lovely space. Literally, when you drive in that facility, it's amazing just the difference. You're coming from a dry, dusty road, and you drive in, and it's just a beautiful, nice environment. But even on top of all that, it's just the people that ministry is serving, just communities that, you know, with literacy, with language, with Bible translation. So I suppose that's particularly close to me because we lived in Senegal for 5 years. But
Yeah.
Similar stories all over EMI, all over the world.
Yeah, just good passive design, good learn as you passive design. Thank you.
Yeah.
I should mention, by the way, the screen we've got up there has a QR code on it. If you want to scan that, and there's a form there where you can leave your details if you've got any more questions of us on how you can get involved in anything going on at EMI, then please do make the most of that code. We got a good question here from Jan. Can you share more about opportunities for EMI staff or volunteers to get involved in this area? I've got an answer on that, David, but what about you?
Go for it, Rob. No, go for it, Rob. You answer that one.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, this is a chance for a shameless plug, but rather excitingly, we here in the Nicaragua office are doing a project in the DR at the beginning of June, where the school there that we're doing a concept design and master plan for have asked us to do a sustainability assessment as a specific package, additional piece of work. So this is a really exciting step forward for us, and we are recruiting to find a sustainability volunteer to help with the team, including a dedicated intern who's on that project. So if you are interested in this area and you've volunteered on EMI projects before, or would like to volunteer for the first time, do give that some thought. I'm actually going to drop a link there on the webpage, Project Trip 612. If you would like to find out about opportunity to help on that specific project. Here we go. We've got some more questions coming in. Thank you, Genevieve. How can EMI ensure a consistent approach to creation care throughout its different offices and projects, especially if there are lots of volunteers involved who may not see it as such a high priority?
Do you want me to answer that one, Rob? Yeah.
Absolutely.
One thing we'd like to do as the working group is really, I think, and even in the survey, just talking about like tools, practical tools and guidelines within the organizations, within EMI as an organization, just to have that continuity across the organization. And we haven't got there yet. We're hoping to maybe develop something this year. And maybe that's a plug as well for anybody who's listening who has particular expertise in this area. We're really looking to develop something, particularly for use in the global south. Something that's not too complicated, but something that will just help us design to take these questions and just kind of grapple with those, put those into practice in our design, in our construction, like a design guide, sustainability tool, that type of thing. So if you have expertise in that and would want to contribute to that, get in touch, scan the QR code and say you want to get in touch. Maybe we can have you on one of the working group calls as well. Rob, anything you want to add to that?
Right, thanks, David. No, I think you've covered that off well. Thank you. Jill via Vicky Ma has asked, linked maybe to earlier point, how has the global south been impacted more from climate change, other ways in addition to drought?
I think, as I mentioned, the intensity of storms. Also, in many countries, some countries were just changing climate patterns. So, for example, Senegal, for example, they used to have 2 rainy seasons. Now they just have one, and that just really affects agriculture, farmers, and things like that. I think can really be seen, yeah, in just changes in weather patterns, unpredictability, late rains, early rains. That can be a real problem, particularly for poorest communities, communities relying on kind of agriculture for survival. You know, if there's intense storms, things get washed away. If there's no rains, crops aren't growing. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I said that the increased frequency of extreme storm events is impacting structural designs around the world, but particularly in global south communities that are more exposed to some of these storms, where they take place more regularly. And also with increased temperatures, we're finding some spaces becoming less comfortable to occupy, and therefore there's a unfortunate cycle of events where requiring more energy to cool or maintain places comfortable is leading to a negative feedback. And how you can provide more comfortable spaces in environments that are getting increasingly hotter is definitely a challenge that is going to only increase as we understand in the coming decades. Amongst many others, arable farming. You could probably do a whole session on this alone, and there will be people who are far better qualified than us to speak into it. There's a good question here from Stacey in the US regarding economic factors in sustainable building practices. This plays a key role in decision making for owners, clients, stakeholders. What have we found? What role have we found that the economic component plays in our project when we're considering this thing?
Good question. I would say generally efficient design is cheaper design. So if we want to, for example, that slide where I showed, it was basically a graph when the Uganda office were carbon footprinting the building. Most of the carbon footprinting is from cement in concrete. So for example, if we can use less concrete in our designs, that's going to reduce the carbon footprint. And actually what the Uganda office are kind of researching at the minute is steel framed structures rather than concrete framed structures. Can that reduce the carbon footprint of the building and probably lead to a more efficient and cheaper construction. Obviously with that, there's the way things have always been built in a certain region or a country as well. So you're going to have to grapple with that question as well. But certainly, generally, more efficient designs will save you money in general.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, when we talk about sustainability and in the assessments that we have been doing, we talk about environmental, but also social and economic sustainability. For true sustainability, it has to be not just environmentally sustainable, standing the test of time, but also financially and socially sustainable. And on the financial side of that, that means designing facilities that are affordable to build, but also to operate. Mm-hmm. And some of the studies we do look specifically at that area. The challenge is that sometimes a more sustainable building can be more expensive to build on the front end while saving over the lifetime of the building. So some of the studies that we're doing now is trying to analyze what is that additional cost and make the case for green funding, of which is becoming increasingly more available for everything from low energy lighting to solar panels to efficient water systems, so that you can see, whilst there is sometimes a higher upfront cost, the long-term impact is lower costs as well as a lower environmental and social impact. So I think getting the financial piece right is so key to making this work. And I think EMI is well placed to really speak into that and connect our partner ministries to the sources of those fundings while we're at it. And Jacob McCall was just asked there about what financial resources are available for EMI's client ministries. Great question, Jacob. That's something we want to work on and be able to provide these signposts to those resources. We're getting a better feel for that, but it's a complicated landscape, and we want to be able to inform our client ministries better, and hopefully guidance to come later in the year where we can help people on that. I'm losing track. There are a lot of questions coming in here. I don't think we'll get through them all. Maybe one more question. I don't know if you see one on there that jumps out at you, David. Okay, this is an interesting one from Paul Berg. How have you addressed conflicts that may arise between the views of ministry staff on sustainable design with those of EMI designers? For example, there may be an initial higher cost for some sustainable design features. Oh, okay, sorry. So I think maybe I touched on that a little bit already. David, I don't know if you want to add on that.
That's a hard balance to get. Wanting to do what the ministry wants, we're here to serve as an organization, but also wanting to advise on sustainable design, on good design. So sometimes that just happens over many conversations. So sometimes that can be a challenge to get the right balance there. Obviously, we don't want to force our views on anybody, but yeah, it's just an ongoing conversation. I think that really emphasizes the importance of just relationship with our clients, and very often it's not. We talk of them as clients, but very often it is a strong relationship, a strong bond. We're in ministry together, serving communities, and we want to do that well. So it can be a lot of conversations.
Thanks, David. Yeah, and Stephen actually just pointed to an interesting example in the Uganda R&D team where they looked at roofing insulation fabric and how that affected solar or thermal gains for buildings. Projects like that are another example, higher upfront costs, but can lead to lower running costs for cooling or ventilation, and being able to assess that well and provide information that allow client ministries to make informed decisions is really key, so they can see how, when there might be some higher upfront costs, how at the back end that will lead to lower overall costs. That's a key role that I think EMI we have to play. Well, listen, I want to thank you again, David. I'm sure I'll have to go through some of those questions. I'm not sure if we covered them all off necessarily, but if we haven't, we're going to have a look through and we'll try and get back to people for anything that we haven't covered on. Just a reminder, that QR code, if you want to engage more, go to the EMI website to connect with the team. During the presentation, I received a message independently from a family friend wishing me Happy Earth Day, which reminded me that we chose this day, the 22nd of April, because it is World Earth Day, movement that's gone back to 1970 on the 22nd of April. So just a reminder that we're part of this. This is not anything new to want to take better care of our creation, but as Christians, we do that out of a love and response to our Heavenly Father who's created that almighty creation and calls us to care for it. And as you were saying, David, and hand it on to the next generation, hopefully in not a much worse state than we find it. Sadly, that is the general trend that's happening at the moment. So it's great to be reminded of these signposts of hope as we seek to turn that around, as we remember World Earth Day, kicking off this series on creation care. We look to the coming sessions to delve further into some of these topics. So as I said, June the 11th is the next one on energy. Do click on that link in the chat and register if you are interested in finding out more. And once again, David, thank you very much for sharing with us today. And thank you
Thanks, Rob.
to all of you who have been joining us from around the world, both live and in the recording. It's great to have had you join us. So peace and love, God bless, and until the next time.